Hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. I guess influencer now means influencing your husband to lose his trust in record time. Today on rSpace, watch someone sell their soul for a better Instagram filter. My narcissist wife, a family influencer, cheated on me with her followers, so I destroyed her career. I've, 34 male, been married to my wife, 32 female, Emma, not her real name obviously, for 9 years. And we've been through hell and back together. We got ourselves through a cancer scare, the death of a pet, and job losses, always having the other's back. We were solid. But the toughest battle we went through has to be our 6-year journey to start a family. My wife had always dreamed of becoming a mother, but it never worked out at first. Every attempt cut her deeper. Some months she would be ecstatic when she was a little bit late, but as usual, the little red visitor would come along and destroy our hopes. This would inevitably send her into a small depression for the next few days. Another reason why this hurt her so much is because my wife is a very traditional woman. She takes a lot of pride in being a good wife, but it was also important to her to be a good mother. She'd even built up a reputation around town as the perfect wife. A lot of that was from the parties she hosted or the pastries she'd give out to neighbors that she baked from scratch. Her social media accounts also played a big part in granting her this stellar reputation. She was far from an influencer, but she had a decently popular Instagram account where she shared tips to other women about how to be a model wife. You know the type. She'd post about all the healthy food we ate, how she'd bake a loaf of bread from scratch if I asked for toast. That's never happened ever once. Or about how she'd always have a warm bath and hot meal ready for me when I got home from work. She just needed a child to complete her perfect mom persona. I don't use social media much myself. Even on Reddit, I mostly just lurk around in subs like this. So I didn't really understand the concept of wanting to have a kid because my brand demands it. That's what she would say some nights when she broke down crying about her difficulties. I always tried to interpret that charitably and assume it didn't mean she solely wanted a child as a prop for content, just that it was an additional reason in the huge pile of reasons why she wanted a kid. We tried everything we could think of. All the tests and checkups showed we were both fine, but we still went through all the fertility treatments we could. These took a toll on us, both emotionally and financially. We're not poor by any means, but we're not exactly affluent either. These treatments took a big hit on our funds. Sometimes I would gently try to advise my wife that we should ease up on the fertility treatments for the month, especially when our funds were low. This would cause her to blow up at me, so I eventually stopped bringing it up. We were so desperate that we even ended up on fad diets. She cut out a lot of pre-processed food and sugar, no soda, and we couldn't even look at anything fried. This wasn't easy for me because I'm a bit of a sweet tooth, but I did it for her and the baby we were trying to have. She started preparing a lot of weird food as well, fruits and vegetables I'd never heard of, or the exotic ones you just walk past when you saw them at the store. They were all supposed to be great for fertility. And of course we were going at it like rabbits. It might sound like a dream to some of you, but something no one tells you is that trying to have a baby is hard work. Your lovemaking becomes a chore. Women are only fertile for a few days a month, so you have to time it right. And she wouldn't let me touch her outside those few days because she wanted me to save myself for when it really mattered. All in all, it was a tough period, with lots of adjustments. It stretched us both thin and tested the limits of our relationship, but we pulled through. I can't say what worked, whether it was the diets or the fertility drugs or the military precision lovemaking routine, but eventually she got pregnant with our miracle babies, twin girls, and life was perfect. It felt like that moment when a heavy rainstorm suddenly stops and everything gets silent, and you suddenly realize just how bad the weather had truly been. We did our best to make sure wife was healthy and safe throughout her pregnancy. She took a break from her community activities, but she went into overdrive on her social media. Now she was moving from making perfect wife content to making perfect mommy content. I didn't mind at all, since she had been waiting for this for so long. This was when her social media popularity started to tick upward. She was making videos about how she was handling the challenges of pregnancy with grace and dignity. People ate it up and she was loving it. She'd often waddle over to me with her phone in hand, excited to show me the engagement on her latest post. She was starting to have everything she'd ever wanted, and it made me happy. Eventually the time came and the twins were born safe and sound. The girls were the light of my life. The first time I saw their little faces, I knew that every bit of struggle we'd gone through was worth it. We were both smitten by them, and we did everything we could to make sure they were happy. For a while, everything seemed to be perfect. A few months later, after she'd recovered from the strain of childbirth and the twins were a bit older, she decided to get back to her community activities. She'd bake huge batches of muffins or cookies for community events and meetings, and bring up local issues in town hall discussions. Now she did that with 2 beautiful girls beside her, and she loved the attention. She'd finally started to feel like the perfect wife and mom that she'd always wanted to be. Now she naturally evolved from that pregnancy content to mommy content. She started sharing everything: parenting tips, daily routines, the children's antics, all of that. Her accounts started to grow a bit, with a few thousand followers on each of her accounts. These people held on to her every word, waiting for her updates and talking in the comments like they actually knew her and the twins. Most of them were just suffering from the typical parasocial relationship, but quite a few of these people really did know her. They were people from our community who followed her accounts. Sometimes she even got stopped on the street by people who wanted to tell her how much they admired her. On the surface, it sounds like everything was starting to go perfectly for us. We finally had our children after so many years of trying, and her account was starting to blow up. She still wasn't a huge influencer yet, but she had a lot of people paying close attention to what she had to say. So it was weird that I was starting to feel uneasy. The twins were almost 3 years old when I realized that the perfect wife that she was online was not the same person I was married to. All those posts about how important it was to give 100% of your time to your family, about being dutiful towards your husband, and perfectly accommodating to your kids, it was all a load of bull. She didn't do any of that anymore. She never really did it in the first place, but at least she made an effort. I mean, let's be honest. Most of these mom influencers are selling a fantasy. Emma was too, but it fulfilled her and put a little extra money on the table, so I hardly minded. Nobody's a perfect mom or perfect wife 100% of the time, but at least you can try. They sell unrealistic fantasies and hand-churning butter or baking bread from scratch every morning, but I would have been happy with her just making the effort to take care of her husband and the kids. She wasn't even doing that anymore. She wasn't even trying a little. She was constantly glued to her phone, typing away. At first, I didn't think too much of it. She's an influencer after all. She was probably just replying to comments. She had to engage with the audience to keep her platform growing. But it was starting to take her attention away from her family, and the difference between who she was in real life and the person she was online kept growing. The children that she loved so much were becoming more of an afterthought to her. When she wasn't making content featuring them, she would mostly ignore them. Sometimes she would even treat them like an inconvenience. She wouldn't say anything outright abusive, but I could pick up on her attitude towards them. They actually did seem to mostly be some kind of prop to her. Her attitude towards me was even worse. She'd completely ignore me for hours on end if I didn't say something first. And when she did answer me, she'd give curt answers before lowering her nose back into her phone. Oh, right. And another big one. Our love life was nearly non-existent. Obviously, we couldn't keep up the Olympic-level rates we had established when trying to conceive, but we had still been frequently intimate even throughout the pregnancy. But we'd only gotten down a few times ever since she'd given birth. The issue that brought things to a head was her phone addiction. On several occasions, she'd be absorbed in her phone for hours on end, well past the twins' dinner time. If I called her attention to it, she'd stomp around the kitchen upset and ignore me for the rest of the night. If I went to prepare dinner for the girls myself, she'd accuse me of trying to make her look bad. This happened at least 3 times a week. One day I snapped and told her that if she didn't want to look bad, then she shouldn't act like a bad mom. The look of shock on her face had filled me with a deep satisfaction. I'd woken her up to how neglectful she'd been in her duties. She immediately fought back, talking about how hard she was working to make things better for our family, saying that she was working on sponsorship deals that were our only way out. I fired back, letting her know that her brand wasn't paying the bills and that we were by no means poor. I reminded her that I was paying for everything we used in this house and still found the time to make sure the kids were fed, and she was buried deep in her phone playing celebrity. The fight was long and ugly. I said a lot of things that I had been too kind to actually say. We shouted our voices raw, and she came to tears, but I wouldn't relent. I loved her, but I loved my kids as well, and I wouldn't have her neglecting them and forgetting to feed them. She refused to come around to my point of view, and I refused to back down. We eventually took a break so I could tuck them into bed, and we continued the fight in hushed tones while they slept. We were at it until 3 a.m., and I slept on the couch that night. It took a few days to smooth out the aftermath of that one, but she didn't miss the twins' meal times anymore. She even made it a bit of an effort to pay more attention to her family. That gave me a bit of hope that I could talk us out of whatever was going wrong. I just needed to be ready to have a firm hand and lay down the law with this woman. I guess that fits the traditional image she wanted so badly. The real kicker through all of this was that she was still keeping up the charade of the perfect wife, both online and in real life. Emma would pretty much completely ignore me throughout the day, then post a video about how she'd spent the afternoon dutifully preparing a homemade apple pie for me. The only thing that hurts more than being neglected by someone who won't acknowledge it is being neglected by someone who pretends they're not neglecting you. I started to worry that she might be suffering from depression. For a few days, I was a Google scholar, looking up all the signs and symptoms of the condition and comparing them to my wife's behavior. I'm not a doctor, but it soon became clear to me that she wasn't depressed. She was just disconnecting from me. I sat and processed that in silence for a while. Why was she building the distance between us? Why was she pulling away from me? I racked my brain for a possible answer. Anything that could explain why she was being so cold towards me. I was a good father. I'd even gone above and beyond, taking extra care of the kids while Emma neglected them. Was I a bad husband? I didn't think so. In the end, I chalked it up to pressure from running her social media accounts. The timeline seemed to match up. She'd only started acting distant once her platform took off the way it had. I tried to be understanding, but something didn't feel right. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe the resentment I was feeling was starting to boil over. Whatever it was, it made me decide to take a deeper look at her accounts to find out what had her glued to her phone all the time. It was simple enough. She never took her phone with her into the shower. She'd always been paranoid of her phone getting wet and was scared that even a few drops on the screen were enough to ruin it. Even as much as we have the privilege of the cloud to back things up, she would rather not risk losing everything on her phone, even if temporarily. So I waited for the sound of the shower and then I grabbed her phone. She'd changed her password, which was a red flag right away. Fortunately, we had our fingerprints on each other's phones, and she hadn't bothered to remove mine. I unlocked the device, opened her Instagram, and went straight to the private messages. Honestly, I just wanted to check for any conversations that could indicate the source of her stress. I expected to see fans pressuring her, or deals that had failed. Call me naive, but I wasn't expecting infidelity of any sort. Even if I had been, I couldn't have been prepared for the reality of the situation. My wife was cheating on me, and not just with one man, but multiple. There were about a dozen messages with her followers dating back months. Most were just flirty or suggestive. A guy would make a blatantly lewd comment, and she'd provide an innocent yet flirty answer. It was all done in a teasing manner, like she was towing the line, but a few of them, 3 to be exact, were downright explicit. Nude photos were going back and forth, and some messages indicated that she had met with these guys on more than a few occasions. My hands shook while I raced to grab my phone and take pictures of the chats while keeping a close ear on the sound of running water. I still can't believe it. 9 years of marriage gone, and for what? Because some guys on the internet showed her attention? The flirting was one thing, but she actually went ahead to sleep with some of these guys? I can't recognize this as the woman I married, but it does seem a lot like the self-centered witch I've found sharing my house. Apparently the fame really got to her head, and she probably started to crave male attention, befitting of her mini-celebrity status. She clearly got that attention, and then some. I don't know what to do. It took all I had to stop me from confronting her right then. This all happened last night, and I'm still trying to make sense of it. What do you guys think I should do? I'm sorry, OP. From what you've described, it seems like Emma has been more focused on maintaining her online image than on the reality of her relationship and family life. Heavy as the social media crown. Gain a follower but lose a family. I think you know what you have to do, OP. Your focus should be on finding a resolution that respects your needs and maintains the well-being of your kids, OP. Update. Thanks so much for the support, everybody. To everyone saying that I should get a paternity test, there's no need for that. This scared me more than anything, realizing the possibility that my twins might not even be mine, especially after desiring children for so long. But I've fortunately managed to confirm that they are my own. To those who said I should talk it out with her, what are you on about? My soon-to-be ex-wife was sleeping with 3 guys that I know of and flirting with a dozen more. And you want me to talk it out? As soon as I found out, I knew it was over. I didn't want my girls around that woman anymore. I don't want them to end up like her. There are enough women on the internet acting shamelessly for men. I made up my mind that I wanted to divorce her, so the first thing I did was call up a lawyer to find out how I should go get started with the process. Then I set out to get more evidence. At this point, she still had no idea that I knew what she was up to. All I had to do was wait for her to shower again, and I'd have a chance to scoop up any evidence I might have missed the first time around. Having to go through my day with this traitor in the same house as me set me on edge. Several times I felt the urge to hit her, just for the pain she'd put this family through. The pain she was still going to put us through, but I kept it together. I couldn't do anything that would weaken my case when the divorce came around. I needed to get my kids away from her, but that wasn't enough. I also wanted to destroy her social media career that came between my wife and her family. She'd made her choice, and now I had to show her she'd chosen wrong. It took a few weeks to set my plan in motion. I talked to my lawyer, showed him the evidence, and told him everything. We set the divorce process in motion, with him preparing the papers, and he told me he was confident he could get me the kids. Divorce courts in my country don't look kindly on infidelity, and we're going to argue abuse based on her neglect and how she used the kids as props in her videos. The divorce was only one part of it, though. I wanted to destroy the social media career that had torn our family apart. Some of you guys suggested that I should expose her on social media. I loved the idea, but I'm not a guy with a big social media following. I would need someone with a bigger account to take her down for me. Who did I know that had a huge social media following? The answer was so simple and so poetic that I actually smiled when I figured it out. Once again, I waited for her to take a shower. Then I snatched up her phone and locked myself in my car. I immediately opened her accounts and started posting screenshots of her chats everywhere I could. I blasted them to her stories and her posts on all of her different accounts. I didn't bother hiding the identities of the accounts that she was indulging either, since they knew she was married. That was the point of her content. That was me getting back at her various affair partners. Then I went through her contacts and started texting the images to as many of them as I could. Almost immediately, her phone started buzzing in my hand. DMs, replies to the new posts, and text messages. So many of them asked if it was real, if she'd been hacked. She even started getting calls from some of her contacts that I'd sent the dirt to. I put her phone on Do Not Disturb and rejected calls as they came in. I felt happier than I had in weeks, knowing her world was falling apart around her while she was washing her hair, oblivious. I knew she'd be wrapping up her shower by now. I was satisfied with the damage I had done. What I wanted to do was change her password and log her out, so she wouldn't be able to log in and remove the posts. But I could already hear her calling my name, demanding her phone. I did a quick run through of her contacts to make sure I hadn't missed anyone important. Then I got ready to present her with a little surprise. She was still damp from the shower when she came in, with a towel wrapped around her chest and another around her hair. She must have rushed out of the room when she saw her phone was missing. That makes sense. She knew what I would find in there if I went looking. She looked at me cautiously as I unlocked the car and handed back her phone. "Why do you have my phone?" she asked gingerly. She was testing the waters, seeing if I'd found the incriminating info on it. I ignored her and replied casually, "You had a few calls and some messages. Here." Honestly, I felt so good saying that. Friends, let me tell you, there was nothing more satisfying than watching her jaw fall open as she realized she was ruined. "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." She scrolled through her phone, her eyes widening. She hopped in place. She was very visibly panicking. "Oh my God, oh my God." She just kept repeating it over and over. I'd expect her to shout at me, to cuss and fight me, but what she said just poured fuel on my flames. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes and said, "How could you do this to me?" She kept trying to deflect, saying my actions were selfish, that I hadn't thought of the kids. I hadn't given her a chance for dialogue. I wasn't thinking about what she'd taken so many years to build. I told her I didn't give a dang about what she had built. It had destroyed our family, and I let her know it was her fault. She fell to the floor dramatically, sobbing her eyes out. Seeing how low I brought her made me happy, and I knew it would only get worse for her from here. I did not, and do not, feel a twinge of guilt. At the same time, I was kind of disgusted by how pathetic she looked. I turned around and left her there. Her sponsorship negotiations went up in flames instantly. Her new reputation was too much of a risk for the brands that had wanted to bank on her wholesome image. In our town, she became an overnight pariah. Her followers found out about it too, and her follower count started to plummet. She even showed me some of the hate messages she'd been receiving, maybe in a ploy to get some sympathy from me, but she stopped when I sent a voice message of me laughing so hard that I had a coughing fit. I didn't even have to leave my house for the woman. She left on her own since she couldn't bear to show her face in this town anymore. She tried to take the kids with her, but I had my lawyer shut that down fast. She couldn't move the kids out of town because of the ongoing divorce. I don't want to stay here any longer, too. I can't let my girls be tarnished by their disgraced mother's reputation. As soon as I get custody, I'm moving us to another town where we can start a new life far from that wretched woman. I'm likely to get the house and I'll sell it right away. And it's almost certain I'll be getting custody, especially when it's now clear that her motherly act was all fraud for the cameras. All I can say to all the men out there is that you shouldn't tolerate cheating. Not one bit. And if you have the tiniest suspicion, follow it. You've gone from 0 to 100 real quick, and your ex's social media career has officially gone up in smoke. Bravo. But hey, let's give credit where it's due. She did manage to get one thing right. She made sure her downfall was spectacular enough to be remembered. It's good to hear that you're focusing on your kids and planning a fresh start. Wishing you and your girls all the best as you start this new chapter. What would you have done? Thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.